I always believed the moon would be kind to me. Not generous, not indulgent, just fair. I did my runs, I kept my head when tempers burned hot. And I gave respect to a pack that taught me how to stitch wounds with pine resin, and how to read the wind like scripture. I was not the prettiest wolf in Duskworld, but people said my eyes held a soft sort of danger. Like a forest path you should not walk alone, they said. Kellen Voss noticed. They said the Alpha's gaze lingered, that the Bond liked the way I moved through training drills, quiet and sure. People say many things when they are bored and the moon is almost full. The lunar Bond rite took place in the clearing we called Old Glass, where lightning had once struck the hillside and left the soil glazed and shining underfoot. Torches ringed the space like a necklace of fire. Our elders wore ash on their foreheads. The air was cold enough to bite, but not brutal, the kind of cold that made your breath curl and your expectations sharpen. I wore white because it was tradition, not because I enjoy looking like a candle at my own vigil. My name is Nyra Ashwyn. I rolled my shoulders and arranged my expression into something steady. Everything about me felt too awake. The choir of cicadas, the heat of every torch, the quiet of the pines beyond the ring, the way Kellen stood at the center, with the moon at his back, and how the world kept tilting toward him like metal to a magnet. He lifted his chin. The right keeper raised a palm. The hum of the pack moved through us like a body of water deciding which way to flow. "Step forward, unmated," the keeper said. We stepped. 7 of us. I felt my pulse in my wrists. Keelan walked the line, not slow enough to be cruel, not fast enough to be merciful. He was handsome in the way an axe is handsome, meant for a purpose. He had a winter mouth, and summer hair and eyes, that could make a promise just by holding you. He paused in front of me. I hated that I trembled. I did not want to tremble for a man who had never once asked if I ate enough after a long run. Kellen's gaze held mine. The air felt thick. Something softened in his face, the way light can open a locked room. Then he breathed in, and it was gone. He moved on. He stopped 2 wolves later. Rhea Talcott, who looks like Stormglass and laughs like contraband, and the sound the crowd made was a future snapping into place. Rhea covered her mouth with both hands. Kalen reached and touched the space below her ear with 2 fingers. The Bond flared. You could feel it from the edge of the clearing. A pressure change and a taste of copper. I do not remember the next seconds well. Someone squeezed my elbow. Someone whispered, "Nyra," as if my name was a bridge I might cross back to safety. I stared at the torch nearest my feet until the flame doubled and blurred, and tears ran down the inside of my throat where no one could see them. The keeper's voice became a distant lighthouse. The pack shouted, then sang. Rhea's mother cried. Kellen's father clapped him on the back. I tasted humiliation like smoke. I smiled because I am civilized. I did not make a scene, because the only thing worse than being unchosen is being unchosen and loud. When the crowd pressed in, I slipped out. Through the ring of firelight, past the children chasing fireflies with cupped hands, past the line where woodland smelled like wet iron. I walked until I could not hear the singing. I walked until the cold felt personal. Old Glass gave way to the Gloamreach, where the pines lean in and gossip about the mistakes of people who walk alone. My breath ghosted. My feet found a familiar deer trail and ignored it. I did not cry in a useful way. I did not sob. I leaked. I thought of all the little kindnesses I had cashed up for a future that would not arrive. The way I had learned Kellen's tells in sparring. The way I had taught his younger brother to stitch a straight line. The way I had saved all my sharpest jokes for when he looked tired. I wanted to ask the moon if it was proud of itself. A twig snapped to my left. I stilled. Pack wolves do not stalk their own on right night. Rogues do not come this close to a firelit clearing without wanting to die. The sound carried a different shape. Softer. Intentional. "Be careful, little Ash," a voice said from the dark. "The woods keep their own ledges." I turned. He stepped into the strip of moonlight, with the sort of grace you learn when time no longer bruises you. Tall, unsmiling, dressed in a long black coat that drank the light and did not give it back. He felt like a chill in my teeth before he felt like a man. "Vampire," I said, "because my mouth is sometimes braver than the rest of me." "Correct," he said. And you are bleeding feelings all over the ground. I lifted my chin. Find a different meal. He didn't smile. The corners of his mouth considered it and declined. I am not here to feed on you. My name is Averic Arclav. The name had weight. Even among wolves who pretend they do not track the politics of the night beyond their borders. His name is a rumor. King of the Gloomspire Court. Old enough to remember when the rivers had different names. A treaty signature written on parchment and in blood. That is unfortunate, I said. I was having a very private catastrophe. You came to the woods to have it, Averic said. The woods are mine at certain hours. That is not how boundaries work. That is exactly how they work, he said, and his head tilted the way a hunter's might when the wind changes. Nyra Ashwyn. Hearing my name in a stranger's mouth hurt more than I expected. If you know me, then you know how quickly I bite. Do you see me flinching? Averic asked. Not yet. Come, little Ash. He gestured toward a path I could not see. You are freezing and furious, and pretending you are not both. There is a fire within walking distance, and nobody there who will gossip about your face. I am not going anywhere with you. You already left everywhere with me when you stepped out of your circle of torches, he said quietly. Let me escort you to warmth so you can decide whether your decisions tonight are yours or made by the ache under your sternum. His voice was steady without being cruel. It felt like a hand at the small of my back urging me toward a door I had not noticed. I looked past him at the trees, at the slight silver of frost crawling up the dead fern fronds, at the moon so clean and indifferent above all of it. If you try anything, I will drive a pine bough through your heart, I said. Pine is not ideal for that, Averic said, but I admire your practicality. We walked. He did not touch me. He kept pace in the way of someone who can hear how far your pulse runs ahead of you. The path was the exact shape of his memory and not at all like a trail. The forest thinned, then opened into a hollow, where an old hunting lodge slouched under a coat of first winter. A faint light winked through a seam in the shutters. Averic pushed the door. Warmth rolled out and met my cold in a way that made my bones ache with relief. The room was spare but not unfriendly. Stone hearth. 2 chairs. A table jammed together from 3 different lives. A kettle singing in a language only kettles speak. Sit, he said. Threaten me again if it will steady you. I sat. He hung his coat, and the room brightened by a degree, as if the coat had been a moonless night all its own. He poured hot water over leaves and waited. Steam rose. The smell was citrus and something bitter that reminded me a little of courage the morning after. He handed me the cup. Our fingers did not touch. Drink. I watched him over the rim. You do not need tea. I do not need air, he said. I still enjoy it. Congratulations. That sounded like a very small knife. I am full of small knives, I said. It keeps men honest. Does it? Sometimes, I said, and the tea hit my tongue and made the center of my chest stop clenching quite so hard. Why were you in our woods, Averic Arclav? His eyes were not red rubies or candles or any of the dramatic things the stories promise. They were dark enough to make you fall into the difference between one midnight and another. Because treaties are loud when they are about to snap. I felt the crack when your alpha chose someone and left you with a performance to carry like stones. I stared at the fire. I hate that you are right. I did not come to bait you, he said. I came to see whether the thing I felt was a danger to my people. And is it? He did not answer immediately. The silence went taut. Outside, the forest adjusted its weight on 1 foot. Sometimes, he said at last, a wound is just a wound. Sometimes it is the beginning of a door. I think you are a door, Nyra. I am tired of being things, I said. I wanted to be a person beside another person, that is all. His gaze softened an inch. Wanting is not a crime. It is if you want the wrong person. There are no wrong people, he said. Only people who are still looking in the mirror when you are already looking out the window. I laughed, and it surprised both of us. It was a short sound, but it came from somewhere true. "You talk like you have practiced being cut and putting yourself back together." "I have had a long life," he said. "Not an easy one. King of the Gloomspire Court must be exhausting. Only when wolves host ceremonies under my nose and leak electricity into the ground," he said dryly. "Are you warm?" I nodded. My hands had stopped shaking. The half painted his cheekbones with an honest light. He did not look like a savior. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a man who had learned how to carry quiet without letting it eat him. "Thank you," I said, "because manners anchor you when everything else feels too slippery. For the tea, for the fire, for not, whatever it is vampires could do when they find a wolf alone." "Not all of us are saints," Averic said. "I expect you will hear that again." I placed the cup down. "What do you expect from me?" "Nothing," he said. "And that is why I am safe." I frowned. "Explain." "People who expect something from you will start shaping you to fit the thing they expect," he said. "People who expect nothing leave room for what is real." "That sounds like a trick." "It is not. It is weary." He reached into his coat pocket and laid something on the table. A thin band of metal, tarnished in an intentional way, etched with runes no wolf elder taught me. It was not jewelry, it was not a collar, it looked like the answer to a question I did not yet know how to ask. "What is that?" "A stay charm," he said. "It will keep you unnoticed crossing my borders if you choose to do so. It is not a chain. You can take it off the moment it feels like one." "That would be a very stupid thing to accept from a vampire I just met," I said. "Yes," he said. "It would." We looked at each other and I felt it then. A shift so subtle I almost dismissed it. Not lightning. Not a bond slamming shut around my throat. Something like a thread thrown across a dark room that knew where it would land before either of us did. Not fate like a prophecy, but fate like a door left unlocked, and a wind that happened to move the right way on the right night. He did not reach for me, I did not reach for him. The air changed anyway. "Do you feel that?" I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. "I feel many things," he said quietly. "Most of them are none of my business, and some of them are." He turned the charm so the runes caught the firelight and shadowed it with his thumb. "Nyra, I am not here to claim you. I do not believe in taking what is not offered. I am here because I recognize pain I understand, and strength I respect. Do not romanticize me," I said. "I am a mess." "You are allowed," he said. "It is overflow. It is not identity." My throat ached for a different reason. "If I take that charm, my alpha will call me a traitor." "If you do not, you may call yourself a coward," he said. "I am not persuading you either way. I am telling you how I have learned regret behaves." I closed my eyes. Kellen's hands on Rhea's face. The hum in the air when the bond took. My name left behind on the table like a napkin somebody forgot to pocket. "I do not want revenge," I said, surprising myself. "I want to not wake up and remember how everyone looked at me like a story that ended badly." "That is not a small thing to want," Averic said, "and it is not a thing you get by staying in the exact shape that hurt you. What would you do if you were me?" "I would leave the room where I was made into a symbol and stay alive long enough to become a person again," he said simply. The kettle hissed. The fire shifted. Outside, the woods agreed with no one. I reached for the charm and my fingers hovered. "If I cross your border, there are rules." "Yes." "Tell me all of them now." "Honesty," he said. "Consent. If you ask a question, I will not answer with a threat. If I ask for your trust, it will be borne on the back of deeds. If you decide you hate me, say so and go. I will not hold you. And you will not hunt my people, just as mine will not hunt you." "That is a lot of trust for a wolf who walked in from the cold," I said. "It is exactly as much as I can afford to give," he said. "Nothing more, nothing less." I slid the charm on. It was warm the way a coin is warm if someone you like has held it. It did not tighten. It did not whisper. It sat there like a quiet fact. "Then I will come," I said. Not to him but to myself. Not tonight. Not to run. To think. To be none of this. "You may sleep here," he said. "No one will find you. In the morning I will walk you to the path that takes you back to your glass, and your torches, or to my road through the birches. Both will be open. That is the entire point. Choice, I said. Choice, he agreed. We did not speak for a long time after that. He read the fire like it was a language with a moral. I fell asleep in the chair, with my head tipped back, and my mouth unflatteringly open, because my body had finally decided I was off duty. When I woke, the first violet of winter morning had climbed into the window seam. My neck hurt. My heart hurt less. Averic stood with his coat on, and his hands in his pockets, watching the trees the way a man watches the sea, when he has made peace with drowning, and is still not going to let it happen today. You snore, he said. You lie, I said. He did not argue, and I liked him a little for that. We stepped into the brittle morning, he pointed. That path returns you to Old Glass in 20 minutes. The other path leads you east to the border stones. 2 hours. My gate is past the second birch with the scar on it. Gates do not stay open. Mine do, he said, for the right people. What makes me the right people? You came alone into the woods without turning yourself into a ghost, he said. You tell the truth even when it makes you smaller. You drink tea you do not like to be polite. You laugh at yourself. You did not break when it would have been fashionable. That is not a real list, I said. It is the only kind, he said. I took 2 steps toward the path that would take me back to the place where everyone knew my face, and still misunderstood my life. I stopped. The birch path waited like a dare. I felt the charm on my wrist the way you feel a key when you are not sure which door it opens. Will your people hate me? I asked. Some will, he said. Some will hate you for being a wolf. Some will hate you for choosing anything at all. Some will love you for the same reasons. None of that is your job. Will you hate me? I do not know you, he said. I intend to. I looked back the way I had come. I thought about Kellen's shrug of relief when the crowd laughed again and the night moved on, and how it would take months for me to hear it when the house was quiet. I turned east. We walked without words for a while. The birches stood like elegant women in winter dresses. The sun made a glass sound through the branches. When we reached the border stones, Averic paused as if the ground here had a memory that asked for manners. He touched the first stone. If you cross, you are my guest. Not my ward, not my prisoner. I heard you last night, I said. It is different with daylight, he said. I crossed. It felt like stepping through a curtain that was not there. A hummingbird fluttered in my pulse and then settled. Averic did not exhale in relief. Kings do not exhale in relief where anyone can see them. He only nodded toward the road that had not been there until it was. A dark ribbon cutting through frost. Welcome to Arclav, he said. Keep your knives. Keep your laugh. Keep your indecision. We are not in a hurry. I do not belong to you, I said, because some sentences must be signed in air before they count. No, he said. You belong to yourself. We walked. The road bent, and a valley opened below where the Gloomspire Court hid itself like a secret kept by a mountain. Towers rose from dark stone, not sharp, but grown, like stalagmites the night had persuaded into architecture. Windows burned with a sleepy, embered light. Ravens crossed the sky like moving punctuation. It should have been terrifying. It felt like a dare I could finally accept. 2 sentries watched us approach. Their faces were pale as unripe pears, and their expressions were indifferent in the way of people who have practiced it for years. They looked at my wrist. They looked at Averic. They stepped aside. Inside the outer gate, the world changed scale. Arclav Keep breathed at a human size, even while it was very obviously built for an older appetite. Carpets softened the echo of our steps. A woman with silver hair and eyes, the color of cold coins, inclined her head to Averic, and to me, exactly the same depth. This is Mistress Keir, Averic said. She knows where everything is, and will behave as if she is unimpressed by all of it. That is accurate, Mistress Keir said. You look like you need bread, Nyra Ashwyn. I could love you for that, I said. Stand in line, she said, and I liked her immediately. Averic walked me to a room that felt like a vow someone kept. even when no one else was watching. Simple bed. Window that faced the pale mouth of morning. A basin. A hook for a coat I did not have. Rest, he said. Eat first if you can. Sleep after if you must. When you wake we will discuss boundaries like civilized monsters. Is that a joke? It is a prayer, he said. He turned to go. Averic, I said, because the word rose and would not sink. Did you ever get chosen? He looked at me, and all of the years in his face gathered like birds on a branch to listen. Yes, he said. Once. And then I learned that being chosen is not the same thing as being seen. I swallowed. I would rather be seen. So would I, he said softly. He left. The door clicked. The quiet did not feel like a trap. I stood by the window and watched the court wake like a slow tide. Somewhere below, a bell chimed a small hour. Somewhere above, a crow laughed at a private joke. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt afraid. I felt possible. I pressed my palm to the cold window glass, and the glass pressed back. The charm on my wrist warmed. My chest did the small, painful opening that means you survived the night you thought you would not. I whispered to the room so I would have to live up to it later. I will not be the story that ended badly. I will be the person who walked out. The window did not disagree. The sun found a way into a kingdom that was not built for it, and laid a clean, thin stripe across the floor like a promise. I slept without dreaming. I woke to quiet that felt chosen. The room had the kind of stillness you only get in places built to keep the world out. Stone that held cold like a promise. Shutters that fit their frames without sighing. Fabrics that didn't rustle unless you asked them to. Arclav's morning wasn't loud. It breathed. Somewhere far below, a bell counted a small hour. Someone crossed a distant courtyard with slow, even steps that told me they had nowhere to rush and a lifetime to arrive. I lay there listening until my thoughts settled enough to be useful. Memory came in pieces. The right. Kellen's hands on Rhea's face. The way the pack had shifted around the new bond like iron filings kissing a magnet. The woods. The hunter's voice in the dark. Averic Arclav's eyes when he told me he expected nothing. The charm on my wrist, warm as a coin from another century. I turned my hand and watched the runes catch what little light the shutters let in. The metal was a muted pewter, unadorned except for the etchings that looked like a coastline from very far above. It didn't hum. It didn't attempt conversation. It sat there like a door key pretending to be jewelry. A rap sounded at my door. 2 knuckles. Not urgent, not timid. Enter, I said, because I can lie to myself about many things, but not about the way my voice steadied when I remembered I was no longer on Duskweld ground. The door opened and Mistress Keir stepped in like she'd arranged the air first. Silver hair braided up out of her way. Pale eyes that measured without cutting. A tray balanced on one hand with a confidence that told me she would drop it on a king's head if he insisted on being foolish. Bread, she said, setting the tray on the small table beneath the window. Soft cheese.
Honey from last season.
Our bees are moody, but they work. Steeped leaves. Not your favorite, but less tragic than yesterday's. Bless you, I said, already reaching for the bread like a wolf who had been taught manners, but not patience. And apologies to your bees. They are difficult to offend, she said. They assume everything is about them and are usually correct. She gave me a frank once-over. I'd slept in my clothes and had a wrinkle map on my face to prove it. There is a bath 2 doors down, she said. No one will attempt conversation. If someone attempts conversation, you are permitted to pretend you didn't hear them. That is a very specific permission. This is a very specific court. Your king mentioned boundaries, I said. He would, she said, as if the word itself required more salt, then added. He is in the lower hall speaking with Captain Thorn Lucet. You will hear a lot of opinions about our captain, most of them are contradictory, and all of them are true. What's the fastest way to insult everyone by accident? I asked. Try to look like you're not listening, she said deadpan. You will eat, you will wash. Then you will walk with me, because people behave better when I am present, and I would like you to survive your first morning. I appreciate the vote of confidence. You will earn the rest, she said, and left, before I could decide whether I liked her or adored her. I ate until my hands remembered how to relax. The bread was warm and honest, and the honey tasted like sunlight had a texture. The tea was one shade friendlier than the night before. I found the bath and sank into water that smelled faintly of cedar and nothing else. Grateful to be clean in a place where no one had an opinion about the way a rejected wolf should present herself. When I came back, a bundle sat on the bed, a dress the color of softened charcoal, simple lines, sleeves that would not get in the way if I needed to run or fight or clap politely while someone said something stupid. A belt, boots that looked made for walking far without telling anyone about it. Mistress Keir had left a note in a hand like careful weather. Wear this. It will read as guest, not captive. The belt is for pockets. Put things in them. If you can avoid fainting, do so. P.S. You will be stared at. Pretend this is because you are luminous, not because you are a wolf. Both can be true, I laughed. It surprised me how easily the sound lived in the room. I dressed and did my hair the way I do, when I mean to be practical and look like I'm not trying. Mistress Keir was waiting in the hallway with a ledger tucked under her arm, and the kind of posture that gets things done without having to announce itself. We will take the East Gallery, she said. Fewer people feel dramatic there. The tall ones tend to gather in the West. The tall ones? Men with reputations, she said. And women who collect them. The East Gallery was a spine of light. Arched windows marched along the length of it, letting in a soft winter brightness that made the stone look less like a threat and more like a shelter. Tapestries hung between the windows, not of battles or beasts, but of landscapes. A river at dusk, a hillside full of sheep that had clearly unionized, a city street in the rain with one window lit like a secret. The floor knew how to be quiet underfoot. A pair of courtiers paused in their murmured path when they saw us. They did not bare fangs or hiss, because this is not a theatre, and they were not amateurs. Instead, they performed the elegant cruelty of forgetting to smile. Mistress Keir felt me feel it. Do not apologize for existing, she said, so softly I might have imagined it. I was thinking of apologizing for the weather, I said. Excellent, she said. Let them worry about whether they caused it. We turned a corner and walked directly into a conversation that wanted to be an ambush. The woman at its center wore the sort of black you buy when you have money and an enemy. Hair like candle smoke, lips the shade of a bruise, a posture that promised she had already won an argument you didn't know you were in. 3 others orbited her, each positioned to intercept thought before it could become action. Mistress Keir, the woman said, as if the words tasted like a cherry with a pit. You have collected something interesting. This is Nyra Ashwyn, Mistress Keir said even. Nyra, this is Lady Vesra of the 9th balcony. She will attempt charm first, then insult. Resist both, Lady Vesra smiled. How restful to meet a wolf who understands instructions. Welcome to Arclav, little Ash. Did you come to return something your kind borrowed? Or to borrow something we might pretend not to miss? I came to eat bread, I said, and to be left alone while doing so. A ghost of amusement touched her mouth. Direct. How provincial. Tell me, do wolves in Duskweld enjoy being photographed while they grieve, or do they prefer the privacy of trees? Depends on the wolf, I said. And the tree. Do you always answer questions with questions? Only when asked rhetorical ones. Ah, she said, and the gleam in her eyes meant she'd just planted a flag she'd prefer I trip over later. The king is sentimental about stray dogs. It keeps him relatable. He will stand near you in public for a week, let half the court sketch out a rumor, then move you to a quiet tower when the novelty pales. Will you climb the stairs with dignity, or scratch at the door? I am taking wagers. Mistress Keir's hand settled on her ledger in a way that suggested math could be weaponized. I am not a stray, I said, and my voice was quieter than I intended it to be, which often happens when a truth stands up and puts its coat on. And I did not come to be pet or paraded. I came because I am very tired of letting people who don't know my name invent my life. Adorable, Lady Vesra said. We have found independence in the wild. Mistress Keir sighed the way you sigh when someone has spilled something expensive and called it art. Lady Vesra is on the Council of Vanes, she said to me. She believes that if you starve a rumour and feed an insult, you can train them to do tricks. Only because it works, Vesra said, flicking a glance at me like throwing a coin into a well to make sure it still had water. Enjoy your tour, little Ash. If you make it to supper, try not to sit where everyone can see your back. We moved on. My pulse had gone bright and irritated but not ragged. I wanted to ask what the 9th balcony was, and why Vesra wore it like a rank, but Mistress Keir had the look of someone saving a lesson for later. "Don't stare," she murmured. "I'm not." "You're staring internally," she said.
It's louder.
"Is your entire court like that?" "No," she said. "Some of us are worse. Some of us are better. Most of us are bored." "Do bored vampires cause more trouble than hungry ones?" "They have longer to plan," she said. We reached the end of the gallery, and the world opened into a room that knew how to hold power without showing off. The lower hall wasn't the throne room. I could feel it in my bones. This was where decisions started before they were allowed to put on their good shoes. A long table, not absurdly long, enough for thought to cross without shouting. Maps pinned under glass. A fireplace with a scar on its mantel, from a night someone would not discuss. 3 people inside. Averic, Captain Thorn Lucet, and a third whose silence had a texture. Averic looked up when we entered, and the rope in my stomach that had been quietly strangling me loosened a fraction. He had that same winter black coat, the same clean lines, the same way of standing like gravity worked different on him out of respect. He did not smile. He did not need to. Captain Thorn was all angles made useful. Tall, but not in a way that apologized. Hair, cropped close. A scar that began at his left ear, and did not quite finish the story by the time it reached his jaw. Eyes like steel when it remembers it used to be ore. He inclined his head at Mistress Keir and then at me, exactly the same measure, which made me decide to like him. The third was a woman who carried quiet like a weapon you only draw when someone confuses calm for weakness. Her hair was black with a white streak that didn't ask for approval. "Nyra," Averic said, voice low enough to feel like a secret I hadn't earned yet. "This is Captain Thorn Lucet." "Captain," I said. "Wolf," he returned, not unkindly. "And Syrah Marcel," Averic continued, indicating the woman by the maps. "She keeps the ledgers we pretend are myths. She will be the first to tell you when you are wrong, and she will provide footnotes." Syrah inclined her head. "Welcome," she said. "I have questions about how your pact structures debt and favor. Not for today." "Thank you for the delay," I said. "Captain," Averic said, turning back to Thorn. "Tell her." Thorn's attention moved like a piece on a board that had been pushed by someone careful. "A Duskweld hunter crossed the 3rd Pine Line last night," he said to me, matter of fact. "Not on your authority, not on anyone's. He was looking for you." My skin learned a new definition of cold. "Name given, Garin Hale," Thorn said. "Grey eyes. Wolf who forgets how to walk quiet when he's angry." "Garin. Not Kellen, not a council envoy. Garin who ran loud and laughed louder, who once let me sleep in his tent when a storm took the roof off mine and then never mentioned it, because he understood that charity can feel like theft if you name it. Garin who hadn't looked at me last night when the pack sang for a new Luna, because some respect is knowing when to leave someone alone. "What did he do?" I asked, even though I knew. "Tracked to the birches," Thorn said. "Lost the line. Slept in a deadfall like a stubborn child. He was picked up by our scouts at dawn. Unharmed. Annoyed." "Alive," I said, letting some of the air back into my lungs. "And angry. Both," Thorn said. Averic watched my face with a concentration that might have been science if it hadn't felt like care. "He requested a meeting," he said. "Alone, with you. In neutral ground." I hated how quickly yes jumped to my tongue. I chewed it down and made my voice less reckless. "I will hear him," I said, "but not alone. And not where your people look like prey to his instincts. Mistress Keir's ledger scratched something approving. Thorn's eyebrow considered rising, and decided against it. The western rookery, Sarah said. High enough to feel like a boundary, small enough to contain complication. 3 doors, 1 staircase, 1 rope ladder we can cut if we must. Averic nodded. Keir, arrange. Thorn, make certain our friend does not collect souvenirs he did not bring with him. Thorn gave me a dry look. Do you bite? When provoked. Good, he said. Then we will get along. The meeting wasn't until the sun had tilted and the keep had stretched. Between now and then was a lesson I hadn't asked for but needed. Arclav was a city inside a stone. Its arteries ran with people who moved like water over rock, wearing indifference like armor. I learned the rhythm of their steps. I learned which doors breathed, and which held their breath. Mistress Keir showed me the kitchens where a thin vampire with an apron and a moral about knives gave me a tart that made my mouth consider crying. Sarah showed me a library where the books smelled like salt and secrets, and some of the spines flinched when you looked at them too directly. Pick one you think you're not ready for, she said. I chose a slim volume titled, Concerning Covenant Threads, and Their Failure Modes, because I am not afraid of telling on myself. Sarah approved. Do not believe anyone who says fate is a chain, she said, almost kindly. It is a net it can hold, it can also bruise. Averic found us there. He didn't interrupt. He waited until I closed the book and the small muscles around my eyes let go. Rookery at 3rd bell, he said. Keir will walk you up. Thorn will be a rumor. I will be obvious. Obvious is useful today, I said. His gaze took in my pockets, my boots, the way I stood a little to the left of myself, when I was worried, and thought I could fool a room by not breathing as loudly. You will be stared at, he said. Keir warned me. I am luminous. One corner of his mouth acknowledged that, as an instinct he approved of. Walk with me, he said, and I did, because sometimes you say yes to the things that don't demand it. We took a stair that thought well of itself. The rookery sat high and spare, a tower room made of air and intention, windows without glass. Ropes and perches and a table scarred into honesty, a wide ring of space where a fight could happen and not have to argue with furniture. Garin was already there, shoulders tight, hands empty to show respect, or because he didn't trust himself with anything that could be thrown. He looked older by a night. His eyes found me, and relief punched a hole through his anger big enough for sense to climb out. Nyra, he said, and my name sounded like it belonged to a person again. Garin, I returned. He bowed, an awkward, graceless thing that belonged to a kid who had grown too fast and then learned manners on the run. He straightened and clocked Averic with a wolf's exact assessment of threat. You are between her and the door, Garin said. I am between her and the ladder, Averic said calmly. The door is free. You may use it if your words decide not to behave. Garin blinked, as if he'd expected contempt and got grammar instead. He looked at me again. You didn't come home. I walked, I said. I slept. I ate bread. I'm here. Kellen, he started, then stopped, because my face did something unkind before I could help it. He wants to make a statement. Of course he does, I said. Does it come with a parade? Your alpha might be a king in a very small room, Averic observed. Do not mistake his surprise for integrity. Garin looked ready to snarl. He swallowed it. You must know how this looks, he said to me. You vanish into the woods. You turn up in a vampire keep. People who like you are worried. People who don't like you are busy making up their favorite reasons. Are you here as a friend? I asked. Or a scout? His expression flinched as if I'd struck him. Both, he said. Sometimes the same thing. Honesty can hurt in the way medicine does. I let the sting live where it needed to and nodded. Then you can carry this back. I am safe. I am fed. I am a guest by my choice, and under conditions I agreed to. I will speak for myself when I decide to. I am not a pawn in your Alpha's apology tour. Garin's mouth twisted. You sound different. I feel different, I said. Not better, Not worse, just not arranged by other people's comfort. He stared at my wrist. What is that? A stay charm, I said. It lets me cross without turning into a problem. From him, he said, jerking his chin at Averic. From him, I agreed, meeting his eyes, daring him to call it a leash so I could show him his error. Garin's jaw worked, and then went still. They will not like this, he said softly. The elders, the ones who already decided the story. They don't have to like it, I said. They have to live with it. He huffed something that might have been a laugh if you turned your head. Nyra, I know you. You're the kind who takes the heavy thing so nobody else has to. You don't have to do that here. You can come back. Not to him. To us. Averic said nothing. He moved half a step to the side, giving me a clean line to the door I hadn't noticed I might want. Then tell me you're not being used, he said. Tell me you're not a pretty story for a bored king. Averic's attention sharpened. Sarah's lesson about nets and bruises hummed somewhere above my heart. I am not a story, I said. I am a person. And this king is not bored. True, Averic said almost absently. I have enemies. Garin's look said that was not the reassurance he'd hoped for. And I have rules, Averic added. Which include not feeding on what I protect and not dressing my protection up like possessions so I can pretend it's romantic. Garin blinked. You don't? No, Averic said. I don't. Some of the heat bled out of the air. We stood in a triangle full of history that hadn't happened yet, watching each other learn who we were now. A shout knifed up the stairwell. Fast boots. The smell hit me before the sound made sense. Iron, old stone, the sharp, too sweet edge of wrong blood. Thorn took the stairs 2 at a time, didn't bother with the last 3, landed like a decision. Rogue, he said clipped. Not ours, not yours. Bait was placed in the south tunnel. Perimeter tripped. Averic's face changed without moving. I saw it the way you feel a storm pressure before the thunder has taken a breath. He looked at me. Stay, he said to Garin. With 2 of mine. And me? I asked. You are with me. We moved. The rookery stairs narrowed insultingly, then spat us into a corridor where the keep's good manners ended. The south tunnel wasn't for guests. It was where the walls remembered their first shape. Narrow. Damp. Runes cut into the stone in a hand more jagged than the one Keir used when she wrote orders with her eyes half closed. 2 guards bled slow and apologetic, throats torn, not mortal wounds but the kind that make mortals out of immortals if you don't respect them. The rogue stood at the far end like a cracked mirror. Too pale even for a vampire, veins like black threads beneath translucent skin, eyes that did not decide on a color. Sliding between red and something that had been blue so long ago it forgot how to be kind. It smiled at Averic. The smile sat wrong on its face like a word in a language it didn't earn. King. It hissed, and the S on king wasn't in the word but it put one there anyway. You keep pets now, wolves and women. Averic didn't answer. He moved forward with a stillness that taught the air new manners. Thorn drifted to the left, drawing the rogue's attention by skill or by scar. I stayed a half step behind Averic's shoulder because I have instincts I don't argue with when they get loud. Come closer, the rogue sang rasped. I want to see if your eyes are still older than your teeth. Tell me who sent you, Averic said. I climbed out of a nest, the rogue said. We don't have names, we have orders and hunger and a god that looks like fire when you're starving. It lunged. Not for Averic. For me. I moved. The world slowed the way it does when adrenaline takes the wheel and you remember you know how to drive. I pulled at shadow the way Sarah had showed me in the library when she explained that darkness is not the absence of light, but its companion. The tunnel obligingly gave me more than I asked for. A shield flared, not pretty, functional, like slamming a door in someone's face and leaving it there. The rogue hit it and shrieked. The sound finding a seam in my ear and trying to live there rent-free. Averic blurred. He did not perform. He didn't need to. He simply wasn't in one place. And then he was somewhere else with his hand around a throat that looked like it would crumble under pressure and did. Who sent you? He said again, and the tunnel had the good sense to echo him, not mock him. The rogue laughed, and blood bubbled. You, it said, and for half a second I didn't understand, and then I did, and hated it. Kings make hunger, hunger makes kings. It clawed for me, not to reach, but to point. She smells like a story, it said. She smells like a door. Averic's fingers tightened. The neck gave way. Ash made a soft noise against stone that I will pretend I did not hear in my dreams. He released what was left with a control that impressed me and scared me in equal measure. Thorn was already at the guards, pressing cloth, giving orders that sounded like arithmetic. I let my shield relax, and it went without sulking. My hands shook for exactly 2 seconds, and then I told them to stop, and they obeyed, because I was the person giving orders now. Averic turned, and for the first time since I'd met him, his control slipped. Not a lot, enough to show me what the inside of a legend looks like when someone you care about nearly had a hole torn in their throat. He stepped toward me too fast. I didn't flinch. Not because I am fearless. Because I chose not to teach the wrong lesson to the wrong man at the wrong time. His hands lifted, stopped, hovered near my shoulders like a prayer that wasn't sure if it had permission to be said. "Do not be gentle with your questions," I said, voice steady because I willed it to be. "If you have them, I can take them." A muscle in his jaw moved. He closed his eyes, opened them, made himself into more space instead of less. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Are you lying?" "No." His gaze slid to my hands, to the charm, to the place where my pulse lived with more volume than was strictly necessary. He nodded once, a decision not to touch me that felt like a vow. "Thorn," he said without looking away, "purge the south tunnel, salt and fire, quietly." "Already calculating," Thorn said. Averic's attention returned to my face like he'd set it down and realized it was the only part of the map that mattered. "You did well," he said. "Your shield held. Your fear had good manners." "Thank you," I said. The compliment shouldn't have warmed me. It did. He exhaled, and some of the storm left the room with it. "This is the part one dislike," he said, and his mouth bent wry for the first time since we left the rookery. "I ask if you need a chair. You tell me no." I refrain from offering a hand. We both pretend our hearts aren't stamping hoofprints into the floor. I smiled despite the ash. "Honesty looks good on you. Flattery looks better on you," he said, then caught himself, and the elegant awkwardness of it unraveled something tight in my chest. We walked back slower, not because either of us needed to, because going fast would have been an admission that speed could save us from thought. Garin was still in the rookery with 2 guards, who stood at a distance that read as polite, and meant prepared. He looked at my face and at Averic's, and did the math a person does when they're deciding whether to panic. "You're both upright," he said. "Accurate," I said. He scraped a hand over his mouth. "Nyra, I'm going to say something that will make me unpopular at home." "Don't come back yet." I blinked. "I thought you came to drag me to the border and give the elders their scene." "I came to check that you hadn't been sculpted into something with sharper teeth," he said. "I came to make sure you remembered your name. You do. And he nodded at Averic, "doesn't look like a man who plans to own what he cannot hold." Averic did not smile. He inclined his head to Garin with the kind of respect you give a rival who chose not to be one. "Tell them I am not missing," I said. "Tell them I am choosing. If they insist on sending more hunters, ask them to send people who know how to tie a tourniquet. They might need it." Garin's laugh was rough. He stepped forward, and for a breath I thought he might try to hug me like a brother, and I would have let him. Instead, he held out his arm. I slapped it with the side of my fist like we had 100 times after runs that broke us and made us better. "I will come back when I decide the room fits," I said, "not when they need a symbol." "I'll keep a tent dry," he said. He left with Thorn and 2 guards who knew how to be present without acting like a warning. Silence has many settings. This one was full and clean. Averic stepped to the window where the light made the edges of him less definite, and somehow more human. "Vezra will say I staged the attack," he said, conversational in the way you are when you speak a truth that cannot hurt you if you put it plainly first. "Half the court will believe her because it gives them a story to eat. The other half will decide they invented you before I did, and be offended that I borrowed their idea. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. He glanced back. "Live in a way that makes their story bored with itself." "That I can do," I said. "Do you need me to hide?" "No," he said. "I need you to be seen." My stomach did the small, annoying flutter it does when hope shows its face before you're ready to admit you missed it. "How public?" I asked. "Is public?" "The Court of Ash convenes on the 4th night," he said. "A petition was filed at dawn to discuss the Broad Wolf circumstance." I rolled my eyes. Of course it was. "They will perform concern," he said. "They will disparage mercy because it looks like weakness when they are hungry for theatre. Some will ask me to bind you to a balcony. Some will ask me to send you home. Some will suggest I keep you close enough to count your breaths, so they can pretend that is protection. And you?" He looked at me the way you look at a horizon you intend to reach, even if it rains, and the road keeps changing from dirt to river and back. "I will do what I do best," he said simply. "Refuse to pretend possession is safety." "Then what is?" "Choice and public record," he said. "Stand beside me in the court. I will lay claim to your guest right, in language the council cannot undo, without rewriting our oldest vows. The words will sound like a command. They are not. They are a wall. You will stand in it with me because you choose to be there." The title we'd decided on for our story flashed like a knife. "Step forward. Unmated and rejected. You're mine now." It would not be a threat when he spoke it in front of his court. It would be shelter, written in the language of a people who hide their tenderness in law. "Will they understand what you are doing?" I asked. "They will understand that I am doing it," he said. "Understanding why is optional." I looked at his hands. The long fingers that had not shaken when a monster tried to turn me into a meal. The patience of them. The restraint. The arrogance. The mercy. "I have one condition," I said. "Only one. For now." I stepped closer because the room asked for fewer lies. "If you speak those words to make a wall, you will let me speak them back someday when the wall must become a door." His throat moved as he swallowed a response that wanted to be coy and chose to be clean. "Agreed," he said. "If there is a day when the words would mean possession instead of protection, you will say no and I will hear you. And if there is a day when protection is no longer the word we mean," I said, "we will find the right one." He exhaled like a man who had stopped drowning and was now dealing with the indignity of wet clothes. "Keir will fit you for something that won't offend the council's old stones," he said. "Sarah will brief you on which elders love the sound of their sorrow. Thorn will stand where everyone can see him so they remember there is a line between warning and war." "And you?" I asked. "I will stand," he said simply, "and if anyone mistakes the line between protection and possession, I will correct their grammar." "Very romantic," I said, and the smile that found his mouth was not for the court, not for the history, not for the room. "Bread first," he said, softer. "Then war." We left the rookery. Arclav turned with us, as if the keep were a creature adjusting to a new weight it had decided not to resent. In the corridor, we passed Lady Vesra and her orbit, their eyes bright as razors. Vesra's smile was what you give a rival at a funeral you're enjoying too much. "Do choose a balcony with good light," she murmured. "We must see you when you fall." I didn't stop. "I prefer stairs," I said. "You get to count each one." Mistress Keir's ledger made a small, pleased sound. I was pretty sure only I heard. The day thinned. Preparations, light disguised as ritual, stacked themselves in neat piles. Keir made me stand still, while pins discussed my shoulders. Sarah drilled me on names until my mouth was a roll call. Thorn made me practice walking into a room where everyone wanted something from me, and none of them would say it plain. By the time the 4th night settled its black silk over the towers, I understood exactly how much of myself I could give a room without letting it build a house there. I understood that Averic had chosen a path that would irritate his enemies, bore his allies into complacency, and protect me with words instead of teeth, until the court forgot why they were angry, and remembered how to be useful. Before the bell called us to the Court of Ash, Averic met me in the East Gallery, where the light liked itself. He didn't touch me. He didn't ask if I was ready, because if I wasn't, we would adjust reality until I was, and that is not a question, it is a plan. You will hear many things, he said. None of them will change your name. I know my name, I said, and felt it settle in me like a weight I wanted. We walked together down to the hall that belonged to decisions with their shoes on. Doors opened. Heads turned. The room inhaled with one long, delicious predatory breath. I stepped forward because I decided to. He matched me because he always had. And somewhere, under the stone and the law and the mouths waiting to be righteous and wrong in the same sentence, fate changed the net it had woven. It loosened, just enough for two people to breathe. The court of ash was older than truth. The hall itself was carved from the mountain's ribs. Obsidian walls veined with silver, torches that burned without smoke, a floor so polished it mirrored more than faces. It mirrored intentions. Banners hung from beams higher than sound, each bearing the sigil of an ancient bloodline, their colors muted, as if the past had lost confidence in its own brilliance. The air hummed. Conversations slithered through it like silk ribbons twisting around daggers. The scent of ash, incense and ambition braided together in a way that made breathing feel ceremonial. I had never stood in a room where silence could be weaponized so beautifully. Averic walked at my side, tall and unhurried, his coat whispering against the stone like the sound of a page turning. Every step he took carried the weight of centuries. Every glance toward him was a ripple of curiosity, fear, and hunger, barely disguised as etiquette. Mistress Keir led the way through the gathered courtiers, ledger in hand, daring anyone to obstruct her trajectory. Captain Thorne followed a few steps behind, eyes flicking to corners, doorways, shadows. The rhythm of a soldier who trusted nothing except geometry. Sirrah was somewhere near the council dais, pretending to study parchment, and actually studying everything else. As we reached the center of the hall, the murmuring folded itself into silence. Hundreds of eyes, red, silver, gold, black, turned toward us. I could feel my heart beating in my wrist, where the charm lay cool against my skin. Averic did not look at me, but I felt him the way one feels sunlight through a wall, steady, deliberate, protective. "Your Majesty," announced a herald whose voice could have cut glass. "The Court of Ash and Veins convenes to address the matter of the wolf who walks under royal ward." I fought the urge to correct him. I was not a matter, but the hall was watching, and there is a time for words and a time for witness. The first to speak was Lady Vesra. Of course it was. She rose from her place like a shadow finding light, black silk gleaming faintly in the fire's reflection. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice sugared and venomous, "the court acknowledges your compassion in sheltering strays. Truly, your mercy knows no equal. But mercy, untempered by reason, becomes indulgence. And indulgence," her smile cut, "is weakness in silk." A ripple of approval moved through the hall, soft poisonous applause disguised as breath. Averic remained still, his expression unreadable. "Continue," he said, as if inviting her to hang herself with her own eloquence. Vesra inclined her head. "The wolf entered our lands without sanction. She carries Duskweld scent, enemy lineage. We cannot ignore the risk she represents. The blood treaties forbid foreign kind from dwelling within Arclav without council consent. Shall we then discard law for sentiment?" Mistress Keir's quill scratched quietly on her ledger. I imagined she was writing. Vesra, predictable as mildew.
Averic's gaze slid to me.
Then back to Vesra. "Law," he said softly, "is not a cage for compassion. It is a scale for context." Vesra's smile tightened. "And what context redeems an intruder? The kind that bleeds in our defense," he said, voice cool as glacier water. "You speak of trespass. I speak of necessity." A murmur ran through the room like distant thunder. Vesra's eyes narrowed. "Then perhaps you will explain what necessity binds you to a wolf unbound by her own kind." Averic stepped forward, The sound of his boots on the floor was quiet, but the kind of quiet that rearranged the room. "You want clarity?" he said. "You will have it." He turned to face the council, to face all of them. Then he looked at me, and I knew, in the space between one breath and the next, that the words he was about to say would rewrite everything that came before. "Step forward," he said. His voice was command and invitation, both sharp enough to cut, soft enough to heal. The sound carried up through the high arches and came back gilded by the echoes of 1,000 nights. My body reacted before my mind had the courage to follow. I stepped. One pace, then another. The eyes followed. My heart stumbled against my ribs. I felt the weight of rejection still clinging to my name like frost. Unmated, unwanted, unclaimed, words that had felt like endings until now. Averic's gaze didn't leave me. "Step forward," he repeated, quieter this time. "Unmated and rejected." The words landed like an invocation. The court gasped, a soft synchronized sound of scandal. Lady Vezra's painted smile cracked into disbelief. He took a single step closer, the distance between us shrinking to something dangerously honest. His next words came low, steady, unflinching. "You're mine now." The hall exploded. Voices rose, half outrage, half awe. Chairs scraped, fans snapped shut. Someone whispered prayers to long-dead gods. The phrase echoed, reshaping itself in every corner of the chamber. "Mine now, mine now, mine now," until it wasn't about ownership, but about defiance. A king standing between a wounded heart and a world that would rather see her burn. Averic raised a hand. The room fell still. "Understand me," he said. "This is not a claim of dominance. This is a declaration of alliance. She stands under my protection. Her freedom is written in my name, and my name will not be used to chain her." A pause. His eyes flicked to Vezra. "Or any other." Vezra rose half from her seat, the color high in her pale cheeks. "You disgrace the throne with this charade." Averic's smile was almost gentle. "Disgrace is a word used by those who mistake cruelty for tradition. Your people will not accept this," she hissed. "My people," he said, "will adapt, as they always have. And those who cannot will find the door unguarded." That silenced her. Syrah stepped forward, parchment in hand. "By decree of the Gloomspire Court," she recited, "the wolf Nyra Ashwyn is granted full guest right under royal oath. Any harm offered to her shall be regarded as harm against the crown. Any attempt to bind, brand, or banish her will be treated as treason." The room buzzed. The decision was not open to debate, not with those words carved into record. I could still feel the weight of what he'd said. "You're mine now." It was a sentence that should have terrified me, and yet, standing there beneath the ancient torches, it felt like someone had lifted a stone off my chest that I didn't realize I'd been carrying since the night of the rite, because in that moment I understood what he'd meant. Not possession, but belonging. Not ownership, but acknowledgement. He had given back what Kellen Voss had taken. My right to exist without apology. The rest of the hearing blurred into noise. Declarations, documents, dissent. The usual machinery of politics grinding against pride. But all I could think about was how his eyes had not left mine once, as if he was daring me to break, and promising I didn't have to. When the court finally adjourned, I realized my hands were trembling. Averic touched his chest, a subtle gesture, like a knight's nod to a comrade. Then he turned and walked toward the antechamber. I followed. Mistress Keir intercepted me halfway down the hall. "You handled that better than half our council could with a script," she murmured. "And you didn't stab anyone, which is more than I can say for my first hearing." "I'm shaking," I admitted. "Good. It means you still care," she said. "When you stop shaking after nights like this, that's when you've lost too much of yourself." She patted my arm with a hand that smelled faintly of ink and lavender. "Go to him," she said, not as advice, but as inevitability. The antechamber beyond the court was dim, quiet, just firelight and shadows. Averic stood near the window, one hand braced on the stone sill, looking out at the snow, beginning to fall over the valley below. His posture was rigid but not cold, more like someone containing too many thoughts in too little space. I closed the door behind me. The sound was soft, but his head turned anyway. "You didn't have to say that," I said quietly. "You could have just written it into record." "I did," he said, turning fully. "But words on parchment don't reach hearts already decided to hate. They needed a performance. So I gave them one." "And me?" I asked. "What did you give me?" He studied me for a moment. "The truth," he said. "The kind you deserve to hear spoken aloud." I stepped closer, enough to see the strain in his eyes. The exhaustion that comes from carrying a kingdom and a conscience at the same time. "That room believes you claimed me as property." He inclined his head. "Then they will learn what kind of king they serve. You're going to make enemies." "I was running out of friends," he said almost dryly. Then softer. "Would you have preferred I said nothing?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The silence filled in the shape of my answer. "I did not do it to own you," he said. "I did it to rewrite the story before someone else could." I swallowed. "The story of the rejected wolf. The story of the woman who didn't let rejection define her," he corrected. The firelight carved his face into planes of light and shadow. I could see now the centuries in him, not as weight, but as practice. Practice in restraint. Practice in mercy. Practice in loneliness. "You've changed things," I said. "So have you," he replied. "You walked into my court and didn't bow. I didn't know if I was allowed." "You were. You are." The air between us pulsed. Alive with something we both refused to name yet. He stepped closer. The distance that had been careful all day disappeared. "You realize," I said softly, "that every vampire in this castle will now think you've taken a wolf for a lover." "I realize they've thought worse," he said. "That doesn't bother you?" "It should," he said, "but it doesn't." Something unsteady bloomed in my chest. Not quite warmth, not quite fear. A strange equilibrium between the two. He reached up, and for the first time since we met, his fingers brushed mine. Light as breath, deliberate as confession. "Do you trust me?" he asked. "I'm learning to," I said. "Then let me teach you something." He turned my hand palm up and traced one of the runes on the charm with his thumb. "Every vow," he said, "is written twice, once in sound, once in intent. Words are fragile. Intent is the iron beneath them." "What was your intent?" "To give you back the right to decide who you'll be next." The air thickened. The fire flickered like it knew something it wasn't supposed to. I could smell him. Cedar, smoke, and the faint metallic sweetness of blood held too long in patience. "And if I decide to leave?" I asked. "Then, I will open the gate myself," he said. "But until then, this place is yours, as much as mine." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of us dared yet to touch. Finally, he stepped back, breaking the tension with the precision of a man dismantling his own armor. "Sarah will want to see you," he said. "She's drafting the official record. Mistress Keir is likely already rewriting the council's minutes to make Vesra sound less intelligent. Thorn is plotting which door Vesra will accidentally walk into next week." I smiled faintly. "You have a remarkable team." "They are the only family I chose," he said. His gaze lingered on me one last heartbeat longer than propriety allowed. "Rest, Nyra," he said. "Tomorrow we begin teaching the court what protection truly means." I nodded, though the ache in my chest wasn't exhaustion. It was something else. Something that hummed under my skin like the echo of a vow neither of us had fully spoken. He turned toward the window again, watching the snow. I left him there, because I sensed he needed the solitude, and because I needed to understand what my heart was doing. Later, lying in my chambers, I traced the charm's runes again. The metal pulsed faintly, as if remembering his touch. I thought of the words echoing through the court. "You're mine now." They should have sounded like chains. Instead, they felt like an open door. I thought of Kellen Voss, of the way his eyes had glazed over when the bond took him to someone else, of how small I'd felt, standing in that ring of fire. I had believed being unchosen meant I was unworthy. Now, I wasn't sure it meant that at all. Maybe it meant I was waiting for the right kind of choosing. One that didn't demand but invited. One that didn't command but recognized. And in that thought, warmth bloomed. Small. Quiet. Dangerous. The kind of warmth that grows into something the world won't know how to name. Snow kept falling, like the keep had asked for quiet, and the sky obliged. Arclav breathed in winter and exhaled a steady hush that let thoughts arrange themselves without being chased. I did not sleep much. Words echo even after rooms are emptied, and the court of ash had given me a chorus. You're mine now. Every time it drifted back, it wore the same intent he'd put into it in front of everyone. Protection, not possession. My chest had been a locked room since the rite. The lock didn't click open, it softened. Sometimes that is more dangerous. By midday, I found Sarah Marcel in the library, which held light the way a hand holds water. Careful, but not possessive. She sat at a large table with 6 open tomes, and 3 closed ones, guarding them like witnesses. The air smelled like old paper, beeswax, and the kind of dust that has agreed to be loyal. You recorded the line, I said, feeling awkward and choosing to keep walking anyway. Verbatim, Sarah said. Which is not customary in declarations, because we prefer legal language that tastes like chalk, but I thought posterity might enjoy flavor. Flavor, I repeated. She tapped the topmost book. You should read this. It's not prophecy, it is worse. It's history badly remembered. The book's vellum was the color of tea, with too much milk. The hand was neat, produced by someone who had trusted their own certainty more than they should have. The title made my skin tighten. Concerning Ash and Vein. The accord unspoken. Is this about me? I asked. It is about the pattern people point at when they cannot name a person, Sarah said. Before the Moon Wars, 3 instances of what our elders called a voluntary bind between wolf and vampire appear in record. The earliest is so wrapped in myth it may be a poem pretending to be a treaty. The second fractured 2 courts. The third, she flicked a glance at me, ended a famine. Short version, when the night is starving. Law will eat itself unless someone feeds it a different story. Does the story end well? Stories don't end, she said. They just move apartments. Mistress Keir appeared like an annotation. Eat, she said, placing a plate beside my elbow. And bring your knives. We're going to the Vale. The Vale, I repeated. Is that a corridor, a ritual, or the kind of metaphor that becomes a corridor when you are not looking? All 3, Keir said, pleased. Walk. We moved through arteries of stone that had learned to be soft. The eastern stairs curved down, then doubled back with better manners, depositing us before a pair of doors carved with threads of light caught in dark wood. The air had a curious quality, as if it had agreed to be thinner for a while to see who would notice. 2 wardens stood like punctuation marks. They nodded to Keir and let us pass with a caution that did not dress itself up as fear. The Vale Room is one of Arclav's oldest truths, Keir said, voice lowered by habit rather than necessity. Not a throne, not a chapel. A place where illusions go to declare their identities, and are corrected. We stepped into a round chamber whose walls were taller than sensibility, and lined with draperies that were not fabric, but shadow trained to hold a shape. In the center, a flat stone the size of a generous bed lay like an altar that had retired from blood and taken up honesty. Averic stood with Thorn at the far edge, speaking to a robed figure whose presence felt like a candle's steadiness, not its flame. The figure turned as we approached and lifted back their hood. Veilrite, Keir said. This is Nyra Ashwyn. The Veilrite was neither young nor old. Their hair was silver not from age but from habit. Their eyes were a color that refused to be named, the way smoke is not grey or blue so much as a lesson about edges. Their mouth had laugh lines that did not apologize for where they had taken up space. Welcome, they said, and bowed without theater. You are the first wolf to enter this room since before my grandmother's beginning. That is comforting, I said. And also the opposite. The veil is not a cage, they said. It is a ledger. It tells us what is owed and what is already paid. Thorn's attention moved from the room to me and back, the way a person watches whether they respect. Averic's gaze found mine, and stayed there long enough to say you can leave, even before anyone has asked you to stay. What does the veil do? I asked. It doesn't do, the veil-right corrected gently. It shows where power hides, where fear pretends to be law, where vows have teeth, and where they are only embroidery. We bring those who claim, and those who are claimed to be certain, both mean the same thing, when they speak a word. Why now? I asked, knowing and wanting to hear them say it anyway. Because your king spoke language the court understands, the veil-right said, looking at Averic with fond exasperation. And because language becomes architecture, if you let it. Averic's mouth shaped almost a smile. We verify intent. We verify intent, the veil-right agreed. And perhaps we learn what else is at work, where your words have opened a door. Kyr's hand touched my sleeve, a weight-like belonging that didn't demand anything but breath. You do not have to stand on the stone, she said. You can watch. Or you can spit on tradition and make it grow up. I am not much of a spitter, I said. But I am tired of tradition thinking it knows my face. I set my palm against the veilstone. It was cool, and then not. Warmth traveled up my arm and settled under my sternum like a coal that did not burn, but insisted. The room dropped 1 degree quieter. The veil-right took a place opposite me, and lifted a palm above the stone without touching it. We ask the veil to show what language cannot hold, they said. We ask it to name the shape of what stands between ash and vein. The draperies breathed. Not a wind exactly, the suggestion of one. Shadow pulled back without moving, revealing 3 thin strata of light in the air above the stone, like pages in a book someone had picked up and forgotten to close. On the first pane, a memory. I saw myself in the clearing at Old Glass, small and shining and trying not to be. Kaelin's mouth half-curved. Rhea's breath stopped starting in her chest. The moment where the trend of my life swerved and was not content to be a footnote. The court watched the scene with the impolite intensity of people who think your pain is a stage play. Do you wish to look away? The veil-right asked. No, I said. I wish to make it look at me. The image shifted. The second pane lit. A doorway with 2 thresholds. On one stood Averic, still as a noun. On the other, me, in a blue dress I had not owned then but did now. Between us, a seam stitched out of night and possibility. The seam did not close. It widened just enough to become honest. The third pane did not resolve into picture. It shimmered like heat at the horizon and then resolved into a single thread that ran from his chest to mine. Not tight, not pulling. Present. Persistent. Unknotted. It did not ask. It waited. Syrah stood in the doorway, quiet, as a thoughtful footnote. Vesra was there as well, of course she was. A hand at her throat, like a woman who has remembered she had one. 2 elders from minor houses with names like Winter Fruit, watched with the righteous appetite of people who prefer the old problems because they know the old answers. What is that? I asked, surprised that my voice was steady. A covenant thread, the veil-right said. Not the kind the moon wars forged with teeth. The kind the world makes when 2 people choose to stand near the same fire. It is not binding, Vesra said sharply. I see no knot, no seal. This is theatre. It is, the veil-right agreed. And a mirror. The world likes to know where it has done something on purpose. Averic's gaze had not left that thread. It did not tug at him. He did not tug at it. He simply acknowledged it, the way you nod at a river you have decided not to drown in today. What happens if we step back? I asked, genuine, not coy. The thread dims, the veil-right said. It does not vanish. The world remembers. You keep your names. And if we step forward? Averic asked, his voice low in a way that made the stone wonder if it should hum. Then the thread writes a new sentence, the veil-right said. It may take years. It may take a moment. Vesra laughed, brittle, like a glass that still thinks it was meant to be a knife. How poetic. A wolf and a king playing at symmetry. Averic's smile was almost gentle. Careful, he said, voice so calm the veil leaned in. You are mistaking what you cannot own for what is not real. You're making a covenant without law, Vezra said.
We are making law answer to something
It cannot counterfeit, he returned. The Veilwright glanced at me. Would you like to name the thing they asked? Not yet, I said. The word caught in my throat on the way out and came away clean. I want to see if it survives the corridor. Screams erupted down that corridor. Not theater screams, not offended murmurs dressed up for court. This was the sound stone makes when something uninvited remembers it had a mouth. Thorn moved first. Blade out, orders short. Kyr's ledger vanished into whatever pocket holds the necessary weapon for women who file the world into obedience. Vezra's entourage scattered like birds that have realized the statue is not sleeping. Averic was at the door when the first thing hit it. Not a person. Not any creature that belongs in a history the polite will discuss. It was a construct, stitched from hunger and made to look like a man so the mind would hesitate while the throat bled. The veil room's wards flared, copper bright, then dimmed too quickly, as if something had kissed them on the mouth and stolen their names. Not ours, Averic said. Not rogue famine, crafted. By who? Sarah demanded, even as she began to speak patterns into the air, her hands building a lattice of words. Someone who knew how your wards are braided, Kyr said, deadly calm. The person who sits near veins without bleeding. Vesra's lips parted in a perfect O of offense. You dare. Not now. Averic cut, stepping into a strike meant for Sarah and taking it across his forearm. The blood that welled was darker than a secret. He didn't flinch, which is not the same thing as not feeling it. I moved without asking permission from anyone except my body. The construct that hurt him gaped in triumph and met my palm. I pushed raw magic into it, the kind the veil had shown me earlier, the kind that remembered earth and breath. It shrieked and disintegrated, leaving a smell like pennies and sour milk. Averic's eyes flicked to me, hot and steady. Not surprise. Recognition. What do you need? I asked, fingers shaking and deciding we could discuss it later. Hold the seam, he said, and I understood he meant the door where Sarah's lattice thinned under pressure. I planted my boots. Shadow rose. The veil room hushed under the scream of my will not to let this place be changed by an ugly intention. The last of the constructs forced its way through the lattice with a child's laugh that didn't belong to a child. It lunged for Vezra because cruelty is superstitious and prefers easy targets. I stepped right to meet it, and so did Averic. And we collided. Not bodies, not even hands. Intent. The thread brightened, like a wire catching light. We moved together without planning it. He took the left, I took the right, and the thing between us met a problem it had never been asked to solve. Two people on purpose. It died badly. Thorn was already mounting the corridor, a squad behind him, sealing breaches, calling for salt and sense. Silence landed like a bird that agreed to stay. The Veilwright lowered their hands. The draperies relaxed into shadow again. We were meant to be afraid, she said. We are annoyed instead. Annoyance is safer, Kyr said, already wiping something viscous off her ledger with a professional sadness. Averic looked at his forearm. The wound shallowed as I watched, but the blood stained the cuff of his coat. He saw me see it, and tucked the arm behind him in the graceless way of people who do not want you to be hurt by their hurt. Stop, I said. Let me look. He didn't argue. He sat on the edge of the veilstone like a man who has never been told not to sit on altars, and chose to start now. I knelt. The cut was neat and stupid, and would have been worse if he had not moved when he did. I pressed fabric against it, then a strip of Kyr's wards when she handed me one without me asking. You bleed slower than a wolf, I said, half to keep my voice from shaking. I heal slower than a lie, he said, trying to be light and failing. Is this how you flirt? I asked. Because we need to rehearse. Sarah snorted despite herself. Thorn returned with blood on his blade, and an expression that promised a very particular apology to whoever built the constructs. Vezra watched us with the interest of a cat considering a mirror. "You put on your little show." "And the veil obliged," she said. "It will not hold. The court will turn on you when it discovers your pet comes with claws." Averic's smile returned, but his eyes wavered the barest bit. "Let them discover," he said, voice so calm the veil leaned in. "Claws are an upgrade from some of the polished hands we entertain." Her smile returned, but her eyes wavered the barest bit. "You're making a covenant without law," Vezra said. "We are making law answer to something it cannot counterfeit," he returned. The Veilwright glanced at me. "If you must heckle the veil, you will need stronger shoes." The Veilwright glanced at me. "Would you like to name the thing?" they asked. "Not yet," I said. The word caught in my throat on the way out and came away clean. "I want to see if it survives the corridor." Averic's throat worked. He turned to the stone. The draperies stirred. Interested. Thorn sheathed his blade, with a rasp-like punctuation. Sarah pretended to look away, and then didn't. Averic spoke first, because kings often do, and because he had learned the trick of sounding like a man before he sounded like a crown. "I vow to choose your name over my reputation when the two are made to fight," he said. The room listened. "I vow to keep my hands open even when fear tells me to close them," he continued, voice steady and clean. "I vow that if protection tries to dress itself as possession, I will undress it in public and start again." He exhaled. The veil brightened in a way no torch has ever learned to do. He looked at me. I swallowed. I have never loved an audience. I love the moment after, when what was said proves itself in the dark. But the veil had not lied to me yet, and neither had he. And I am not here to be a symbol who refuses to be a person. "I vow," I said, aware of my voice finding its posture, "to tell you the truth, even when it makes me smaller in a room that rewards performance. I vow to keep my teeth for our enemies and my tongue for the nights we are too tired to be brave." Averic's eyes warmed like coals deciding to be generous. "I vow to leave," I said, and the room startled. "If the only way to stay is to forget myself. And I vow to return, if the only way to leave is to become a story other people like more than the woman I am." Averic's throat worked. He looked at me. The thread between us glowed and then settled to a steady hum, like a wire that had found its current. The Veilwright bowed their head slightly. "This is a vow that knows how to be a door," they said. "Good." Keir cleared her throat in a way that reminded the world she owned the schedule and it should be grateful. "We will need to tell the kitchens to plan for a smaller, angrier supper than usual," she said. "The court will whisper, let them." Thorn, find the hole and the one who dug it. Sarah, draft what we will say about it that is true enough to ruin the lies. They moved. They always do. That is how Arclav survives. Averic and I were left a breath alone. He looked at my hands, now steady, then at the charm on my wrist, then at the veilstone, where our vows had chosen to become loud. "You're shaking less," he said. "I am still shaking," I said. "I am just better at disguises." He inclined his head, accepting grammar as fate. "Rest." I nodded, though the ache in my chest wasn't exhaustion. It was something else, something that hummed under my skin like the echo of a vow neither of us had fully spoken. He turned toward the window again, watching the snow. I left him there, because I sensed he needed the solitude, and because I needed to understand what my heart was doing. In the passage, Garin leaned against a pillar, like a man who had found the room he was supposed to be in, and then chosen to stand in the hallway outside it on principle. His eyes clocked the dried blood on Averic's sleeve, then me, then the way our mouths did not betray us and gave us away anyway. "You look alive," he said. "I am," I said. "The elders heard there was trouble," he went on, pushing off the pillar. "They sent me to see if it was the kind that can be solved with apology or knives." "Knives," Thorn said, passing. "But we will carve the apology into the right door." Garin's grin was rough. He looked at Averic with the unfriendly respect wolves reserve for men who keep their promises. "You got cut." "So did the lattice," Averic said. "We both will heal." Garin scratched the back of his head. Do I need to take a message to Duskweld? Yes, I said. Tell them the world is not waiting for their permission anymore. And tell my mother I am eating. She will worry otherwise. Garin's grin turned real. I will tell her you are eating and fighting and making trouble in rooms built for it. Also tell her, Keir added as she swept past, that her daughter is politely terrifying and we are stocking more honey. He blinked and then saluted her with a respect that warmed me in a place I had been pretending was already healed. Yes, ma'am. He left with Sarah and with Thorn to learn which doors needed to be nailed shut. We kept walking. The weeks that followed rebuilt Arclav not as a fortress, but as a home. Wolves and vampires walked side by side again. Not because we forgot history, but because we were finally willing to write the next chapter together. The veil's thread still glowed when I passed it. Some nights, I swore I could hear it hum, the faint, steady sound of two names being rewritten into something stronger than either could have been alone. And every dawn, when the first light touched the stones, I thought about the word rejected. How small it had made me once, how it had felt like a door slamming shut. Now, I saw it differently. Rejection had been the ending of a story I was never meant to stay in. Acceptance wasn't someone opening their arms, it was me opening my eyes. And maybe that's what love really is. Not being chosen for what someone needs, but being seen for who you already are. The story ends there, the way all stories do. Halfway between what was lost and what was finally found. But before you go, before the video fades and the snow covers the last footprints, I want to ask you something. Tell me, do you believe that being rejected can sometimes be the very thing that sets you free? That the pain of not being wanted is the first step toward finally finding the one who sees you, not as broken or less, but as enough? Or do you think acceptance only matters when it comes from someone else? When someone finally looks at you and says, "You're mine now," and you realize they mean, you were always meant to belong to yourself first? What do